Chapter 1: The Night Everything Shattered. My name is Fairy Natalia, and 6 months ago, I was the kind of woman who checked her phone every 3 minutes, hoping for a text that would never come. I was 26, working as a marketing coordinator in downtown Toronto, and completely lost in the aftermath of what I thought was the love of my life walking away. "Fairy, you need to stop," my best friend Sarah said, watching me type and delete the same message to Marcus for the 10th time. "You're literally shaking." She was right. My hands trembled as I held my phone, crafting another desperate attempt to reach the man who had told me 3 weeks earlier that he needed space to figure things out. What I didn't know then was that his space included someone else, a coworker named Jessica whom I discovered through a mutual friend's Instagram story. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove to his apartment building and sat in my car for 2 hours, watching their silhouettes through his living room window. When I finally saw them kiss, something inside me broke so completely that I couldn't even cry. I just sat there, numb, watching my entire sense of self crumble. How could he replace me so easily? I whispered to my steering wheel. What did I do wrong? What does she have that I don't? The questions tormented me for weeks. I sent long, emotional texts explaining how much I loved him. I wrote letters I never sent. I analyzed every conversation we'd ever had, searching for clues about where I went wrong. I even considered showing up at his office, convinced that if I could just talk to him face to face, he'd remember what we had. But the universe had other plans. Chapter 2: The Mentor Who Changed Everything. It was during one of my lowest moments, refreshing his social media for the 100th time that day, when I stumbled across a lecture video titled The Psychology of Emotional Independence by Dr. Walker Teddy, a clinical psychologist from Austin, Texas. Dr. Teddy wasn't your typical self-help guru. He was a serious academic who had spent 20 years studying attachment theory and relationship dynamics. His calm, thoughtful voice cut through my emotional chaos like a lighthouse in a storm. The greatest tragedy in modern relationships, he said in that video, isn't being left. It's losing yourself in the process of trying to hold on to someone who's already gone. Something about those words hit me so hard that I actually paused the video and wrote them down. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone understood exactly what I was going through. I spent the next 3 days watching every lecture Dr. Teddy had ever posted. His approach was different from anything I'd encountered. He didn't promise quick fixes or manipulation tactics. Instead, he talked about something called authentic self-recovery based on the work of Carl Jung and other pioneering psychologists. Finally, I worked up the courage to email him. To my surprise, he responded within 24 hours, inviting me to a virtual consultation. "Fairy," Dr. Teddy said during our first video call, his kind eyes filled with understanding, "tell me about the woman you were before Marcus. What did you love? What excited you? What made you feel alive?" I sat there for a full minute, unable to answer. The realization was devastating. I couldn't remember who I was before him. Chapter 3: The Shadow Self and the Art of Letting Go. This is more common than you think, Dr. Teddy explained during our second session. Carl Jung called it losing touch with your authentic self. When we become overly focused on another person's validation, we suppress parts of our own personality, what Jung termed our shadow self. He showed me a study from the University of British Columbia that followed 500 women through relationship breakups across Canada and the United States. The women who recovered strongest weren't the ones who got their partners back, he said. They were the ones who rediscovered themselves. Dr. Teddy introduced me to what he called the 5 pillars of emotional independence. These weren't manipulation tactics or games to win Marcus back. They were tools for rebuilding my relationship with myself. Pillar 1: Sacred Silence. Silence isn't about punishing him, Dr. Teddy explained. It's about stopping the hemorrhaging of your emotional energy. Every time you reach out, you're teaching him that his withdrawal has no consequences. He referenced research from the University of Melbourne that studied communication patterns after breakups. Women who went completely silent for at least 60 days showed significantly higher self-esteem recovery and were more likely to attract healthy relationships in the future. The assignment was simple but terrifying: complete radio silence. No texts, no calls, no social media interactions. Nothing. But what if he thinks I don't care? I protested. Fairy, Dr. Teddy said gently, if someone needs you to chase them to know you care, they don't understand love. Chapter 4, The Struggle Begins. The first week of silence was brutal. I must have typed 100 messages to Marcus that I never sent. I found myself reaching for my phone constantly, my fingers automatically opening our old conversation thread. Dr. Teddy had warned me about this. Your brain is literally going through withdrawal, he explained. You've been getting dopamine hits from his responses, and now that source is gone. To help with the cravings, he taught me a technique from cognitive behavioral therapy. Every time I wanted to text Marcus, I had to write in a journal instead, but not about him. About me. What did you do today that made you proud? I would write. What did you learn? What did you enjoy? At first, the pages were mostly blank. I realized with horror that my entire life had revolved around him. I didn't have hobbies anymore. I'd stopped seeing friends. I'd even chosen my clothes based on what he might like. But slowly, something began to shift. Chapter 5, The Reverse Psychology of Emotional Scarcity. There's a principle in psychology called psychological reactance, Dr. Teddy explained during our 4th session. When something becomes unavailable to us, we naturally want it more. But this only works if the unavailability is authentic, if you're genuinely building a life that doesn't revolve around him. He showed me a fascinating case study from a psychology practice in Sydney, Australia. A woman named Emma went through exactly what you're experiencing. Her ex-boyfriend left her for someone else. Instead of chasing him, she disappeared completely and focused on her career and personal growth. 6 months later, he reached out, confused and regretful. But by then, Emma had changed so much that she was no longer interested. What made the difference? I asked. She didn't disappear to get him back. She disappeared to get herself back. And that authentic transformation was what made her irresistible, not just to him, but to everyone around her. This introduced the second pillar. Pillar 2, Authentic Scarcity. Scarcity only works if it's real, Dr. Teddy emphasized. You can't fake being busy or pretend to be happy. You have to actually build a life so fulfilling that his presence or absence becomes irrelevant. My assignment: identify 3 areas of my life I'd neglected during the relationship and commit to rebuilding them. I chose fitness, my career, and my friendships. The fitness part was hardest. I'd gained 20 pounds during our relationship and felt terrible about my body. But instead of crash dieting, Dr. Teddy recommended I approach it as self-care, not self-punishment. Exercise releases endorphins that naturally combat depression and anxiety, he explained. Plus, physical activity helps process emotional trauma stored in the body. Chapter 6, The Unexpected Breakthrough. 3 months into my journey, something remarkable happened. I was at a coffee shop, reading a book about psychology, something I never would have done when I was with Marcus, when I realized I hadn't thought about him all morning. It wasn't that I'd forgotten him or stopped caring. I'd just become genuinely absorbed in my own life again. I was training for a 10K run, had gotten a promotion at work, and was taking a pottery class on weekends, something I'd always wanted to try. That's when Dr. Teddy introduced the 3rd pillar. Pillar 3, Emotional Alchemy. Carl Jung believed that our greatest growth comes from transforming our pain into wisdom, Dr. Teddy explained. Instead of seeing your heartbreak as something to overcome, what if you saw it as raw material for becoming the woman you're meant to be? He shared research from the University of North Carolina that studied post-traumatic growth in women after relationship endings. Participants who actively worked to find meaning in their pain showed remarkable personal development, increased self-reliance, deeper relationships with others, and a stronger sense of personal values. The exercise was to write a letter to my pain, thanking it for the lessons it taught me. It sounds weird, but the process was incredibly healing. Dear Heartbreak, I wrote, thank you for showing me how much I had abandoned myself. Thank you for forcing me to build a life that belongs only to me. Thank you for teaching me that my worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to see it. Chapter 7: The Shadow Work. 4 months in, Dr. Teddy introduced me to one of Jung's most powerful concepts, shadow work. Your shadow contains all the parts of yourself you've suppressed or denied, he explained. Often, we hide these parts because we think they'll make us unlovable. But integrating your shadow is essential for authentic self-recovery. He showed me a study from the University of Toronto that examined women's behavior in relationships. Women who suppressed their assertiveness, independence, or ambition to keep their partners happy were 60% more likely to experience anxiety and depression after breakups. I realized I'd been doing exactly this. With Marcus, I'd become smaller, quieter, less opinionated. I'd stopped pursuing my dream of starting my own marketing consultancy because he'd seemed threatened by my ambition. Pillar 4: Shadow Integration. What parts of yourself did you hide in the relationship? Dr. Teddy asked. The list was longer than I expected: my competitiveness, my love of intellectual debates, my independence, my wild sense of humor, my ambitious dreams. I'd packaged myself into a girlfriend version that I thought he'd find more attractive. Now, Dr. Teddy said, your job is to reclaim those parts. Not to spite him, but because they're essential pieces of who you are. I started small. I joined a debate club at work. I began planning my business launch. I traveled solo to Montreal for a weekend, something I'd always wanted to do but Marcus had discouraged. Each step felt like coming home to myself. Chapter 8: The Test. 5 months into my transformation, the test came. Marcus texted me. Hey, I know I don't deserve it, but I miss talking to you. Can we grab coffee? My heart pounded. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to pour out everything I'd been holding back. But Dr. Teddy had prepared me for this moment. Pillar 5: Conscious Choice. When someone from your past resurfaces, he'd explained, it's not about whether you respond. It's about responding from your authentic self, not your wounded self. He'd shown me research from Stanford University about decision-making after emotional trauma. Women who took time to process their emotions before making relationship decisions were 40% more likely to make choices aligned with their long-term well-being. I sat with the message for 3 days. Not to play games, but to honestly examine how I felt. The woman who'd sat in her car watching his apartment window would have responded immediately. But I wasn't her anymore. I was someone who valued my peace too much to jeopardize it without careful consideration. When I finally responded, it was simple: I'm in a good place right now and not ready for that conversation. I wish you well. Chapter 9: The Unexpected Return. What happened next surprised everyone, including Dr. Teddy. Marcus didn't just accept my boundary, he seemed to become obsessed with it. Over the following weeks, he found increasingly creative ways to reach out. Through mutual friends, through work connections, even through my sister on social media. I need to see you, he told my friend Sarah. She's different. I made a huge mistake. But here's the thing, I was different. And the woman I'd become didn't need his validation to feel whole. Dr. Teddy explained what was happening through the lens of attachment theory. You've become what psychologists call securely attached to yourself. You're no longer anxiously seeking external validation. That emotional independence is incredibly attractive to others, especially to people who are used to being chased. He referenced a study from the University of Auckland that followed couples through breakups and reconciliations. Partners were most likely to want to reconcile when their ex showed genuine personal growth and emotional stability, not when they showed desperation or anger. Chapter 10: The Power of Choice. The turning point came at a work conference in Vancouver. I was presenting my new business idea when I spotted Marcus in the audience. He'd driven 4 hours to attend a conference outside his field, clearly hoping to see me. After my presentation, he approached me. "Fairy, you're incredible. I've been such an idiot. Can we please talk?" Looking at him, I felt nothing. Not anger, not love, not even curiosity. Just a peaceful neutrality that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. Marcus, I said gently, I've spent the last 6 months rebuilding my life. I'm happy now, genuinely happy, in a way I never was when we were together. I don't think going backward would serve either of us. His face fell, but I continued, I want you to be happy too. But my happiness no longer depends on your presence or absence. And that's exactly where I need to be. Chapter 11, The Full Circle Moment. Dr. Teddy smiled when I told him about the Vancouver encounter during our final session. You've completed what Jung called individuation, he said. You've integrated all parts of yourself and no longer need external validation to feel whole. That's the ultimate goal, not getting someone back, but getting yourself back. He showed me one final study from Harvard University's long-term happiness research. People who focus on personal growth and authentic self-development after relationship trauma show higher life satisfaction, better future relationships, and increased resilience to emotional setbacks. The irony, Dr. Teddy continued, is that becoming the kind of person who doesn't need someone to complete them makes them incredibly attractive to others. But by then, they're selective about who gets access to their energy. Chapter 12, The New Life. Today, 18 months after that night I sat crying in my car, my life looks completely different. I launched my marketing consultancy, which is thriving beyond my wildest dreams. I completed my first half marathon. I traveled solo through Europe. I'm dating someone new, a kind, emotionally mature man who celebrates my independence rather than feeling threatened by it. Marcus still reaches out occasionally, usually around holidays or my birthday. I respond politely but briefly. There's no anger anymore, just the clear understanding that we're different people now, living different lives. The most beautiful part? I'm grateful for the heartbreak. It forced me to confront parts of myself I'd been avoiding and to build a life based on my own values rather than someone else's approval. Chapter 13, The Ripple Effect. My transformation didn't just affect my romantic life, it changed everything. My relationships with friends and family deepened because I was no longer desperately seeking validation. My work improved because I was operating from confidence rather than fear. Even my relationship with my own reflection changed. I finally liked the woman looking back at me. Dr. Teddy calls this the authenticity ripple effect. When you align with your true self, every area of life improves because you're no longer fragmenting your energy trying to be what others want you to be. The greatest gift you can give the world, he told me, is the fully realized version of yourself. Not the version you think others want, but the version that emerges when you strip away all the pretense and conditioning. Chapter 14, The Lesson That Changed Everything. If I could go back and tell my broken-hearted self one thing, it would be this: the person who left you did you the greatest favor of your life. They forced you to discover that you are whole, complete, and worthy of love exactly as you are. The silence that I thought would bring him back actually brought me back to myself. The space I thought was empty was actually full of possibility. The loneliness I feared was actually solitude, a gift that allowed me to hear my own voice again. Dr. Teddy was right, you don't heal from a broken heart by getting someone back. You heal by becoming someone who could never be broken by another person's inability to love you properly. Epilogue, The Woman Who No Longer Begs. As I write this, sitting in my favorite cafe with my laptop and my dreams spread out before me, I think about all the women who are where I once was, checking their phones, crafting perfect messages, wondering why they're not enough. I want to tell them what Dr. Teddy taught me: you are enough. You always were enough. The right person will never make you question that. The woman who begs for love is afraid of her own power. The woman who knows her worth doesn't need to beg, she chooses. And that choice, made from a place of wholeness rather than desperation, changes everything. Marcus was right about one thing: I am different now. I'm the woman I was always meant to be, before I learned to make myself smaller for someone else's comfort. And yes, the silence worked. He did come back, just like the title promised. But by then, I'd discovered something much more valuable than his attention, my own. The greatest love story isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about becoming so complete within yourself that you only attract love that adds to your joy rather than filling a void. That's the real secret. That's the power of authentic transformation. And that's why, sometimes, the best thing someone can do is leave, so you can finally find your way back to yourself. The woman who stops begging for love is the one who starts generating it, not by chasing others, but by becoming irresistibly herself.